Hey guys, so I am actually taking over the show this week because Ryan, he's a little busy, whatever. But I had a great conversation with Dylan Camacho from the Call to Action podcast about one of the best bands, easily of the 90s and the 2000s, and I would argue just of all time, period, that being the Deftones. So please, come with me on this fun little journey. Let's check this out.
What did the devil give you for your soul, Tommy?
Well, he taught me to play this here guitar real good.
Oh, son, for that you traded your everlasting soul?
Well, I wouldn't use it.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Downtuned Dissection. I am your guest host this week, Chris Doman, filling in for Ryan McClellan. He's a little busy this week, so I just basically said, hey, listen, man, I'm going to hijack the show because I've got a conversation that I've wanted to do for a long effing time, and I found the right person to do it. So, tough shit, buddy. Sorry. I love you and all. But now, as most of you guys know, especially for like our Schmodown reactions, we seem to have this stupid rivalry with our good friends over at Call to Action. But,
Do we?
But when I made an appearance over there, I discovered that one of their head honchos and I actually have a lot in common, especially when it regards to our taste in music. And please, everybody, welcome to the show, if you would, Dylan Camacho. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry, man. Feel free to correct me.
Hey, you've got it. No,
Awesome.
right. It sounds as Asian as possible. You can catch me at the Call to Asian episodes that I host very infrequently, and people will say it's racist. Despite that, it is not racist. We get as much Call to Asian representation as possible on that show because we're champions of minority. I will correct one thing in there, though. You mentioned that we have a rivalry between dedicated to art and Call to Action, and that's not true. I didn't know what the show was until it just came on just now. So, hey, guys. Hope I got some frequent crossover fans over here watching the show. Doing something totally un-Schmodown related, but if you're watching on video, you can catch me at the Call to Action podcast with this sweet new shirt. We've got merch now. Go check it out. Go holler at us. I'm stoked. But we're not here talking about all that. We are here talking... I realize it's a Deftones podcast. That's what you guys are. It's a Deftones to Action podcast episode.
You could say that we are dedicated to the action known as Deftones. And Dylan, I'm just gonna jump right into this, man. What was your first experience with the legendary, formerly 4-piece, now 5-piece band, Deftones?
Ooh, talking 4 pieces and 5 pieces is getting me hungry right after dinner. That's fine. First experience with it. So I vividly remember this, and this is a nice, almost kind of like nod to the Call to Asian gimmick. The first time I'd ever heard Deftones was in a Dragon Ball Z movie, and yeah, for whatever reason, the Dragon Ball Z movies had fire soundtracks. Like, occasionally Deftones songs would come on there, like, good metal before, like, it was ahead of its time. Like, I think there might have been Killswitch before Killswitch was, like, mainstream on there. Like, just random, like, bands like that would pop up into it. So, anyway, I remember it was Cooler's Revenge. For those going to look for that specific scene, what I'm talking about, I hear, it was, maybe only 7, 8. I know it wasn't too long after White Pony had released. But Changing the House of Flies comes on right as Goku is fighting Cooler, and it's this lead-in intro song into him turning Super Saiyan again, and this is just after like the Frieza saga. For all of you DBZ heads who know what I'm talking about, more power to you. If you've never watched Dragon Ball Z, just assume I'm talking just Hebrew at you for the next couple minutes. So there's a sweet part where he's fighting Cooler, who's like Frieza's brother, and it's a movie thing. You don't have to worry about canon in Dragon Ball Z. But this is just after he'd gone Super Saiyan for the first time, and whenever I was 7 or 8, I lost my mind over that, and I found out there was DBZ movies. We rented that at the video store. My age is showing. And sat there, plugged that bad boy in. I heard that song, fell in love with it. I had to find what was this? What was this band? And I looked through the credits, and it's Deftones, Changing the House of Flies. To date, is still my favorite song of all time. White Pony, arguably one of the greatest albums ever produced. Definitely, if you're a Deftones fan, it is probably your number one, if not in your top 3, undisputedly.
Oh, it undisputedly it's in my top 3. Like, I don't know if I can say it's my number 1, but damn if it's not close. Like, it's probably my number 2. Like, and here, then let's, and I'll give my story here real fast. Like,
Sure.
So growing up, I listened to a lot of butt rock, unfortunately, and I kind of caught on to the whole new metal scene, like literally right as it was dying. So,
Yeah.
but I still would listen to a lot of radio, and occasionally I would hear stuff late at night that was a little more heavier, a little more aggressive, and I very vividly remember there was this song that just had this very simple riff, and I would hear this kind of poorly recorded but still incredible performance, I get bored, and I listen to this guy just wailing and then shrieking. I'm like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing. So I had to look it up, and then I'm like, okay, Bored by Deftones, cool. Then I started listening to like stuff like My Own Summer, Be Quiet, Drive Far Away, and Changing the House of Flies. And around this time, Diamond Eyes was just about to drop.
Ooh.
So I got caught up, and that was actually one of the first albums I ever purchased with my own money. And what a damn good place to start! Seriously, as soon as that drop kicks in, and you got that 8-string goodness from Steph, I'm like,
Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun. Yep, leads right in with Diamond Eyes. Oh, buddy. We will probably just do a top 5 segment because I could see where you're already going with that. Maybe top 3 because there's enough albums where they could do 5, but I feel like 3 is probably just the valid one to go with them on that one. Yeah, well, we have to go into that.
We have to. So then, screw it. Like, give me your top 3 or 5 Deftones.
Let's do top 3. Do you want to go 3 and then your 3, 2 then 2 then 1 then 1? All right,
let's do it.
Number 3 for me. I had to look through the discography really quick to be sure because I know my number 2 and number 1.
I'm literally pulling my Spotify up right now.
And I won't lie, this is going to be one of those criminally under the radar ones. Self-titled is my number 3.
Okay, I can respect that. I can respect that.
Self-titled is definitely a beast of its age. It has this nice dark tone to it without being dark and heavy. It's heavy and raw, but in the scheme of things, it felt like, how would I describe it? Deftones to me has always been one of those bands who's had an album for every step of my life, and I love that they are just this old band, perfectly set from like my time span of being alive. In that, whenever I was listening to White Pony for the first time, all of that had very, like, everything is teenage angsty titles in their own song. Like, it's literally made for me at my teenage years and even like my younger years as I was listening to it. So then 2003 hits. That's when Deftones, the self-titled album, drops. That is me at 13. That is me with 3 Days Grace's first album, emo, cringy, hardcore teenager. And Deftones self-titled hits that perfectly with that tone. I was so angry, and it had so much raw scream. Hexagram is just 4 minutes of screaming straight. Just raw, visceral screaming and stuff like that. And a lot of the rest of it just had some nice, sad, melancholy notes that I think just lands perfectly for that teenage angst feeling I was at. So self-titled, for a very long explanation, is my number 3.
Number 3, I actually think I'd have to go... I think I actually have to go with what I will still argue is the quote-unquote worst sounding record. But to me, it's also probably their most energetic, and I think it's their most raw as far as the performance and the songwriting, and that is Adrenaline.
Adrenaline, of course.
Dude, like, yeah. And I very vividly remember the first time I heard Engine Number 9.
Whew.
I was playing a show in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the club put it on in between bands, and and it's funny, my band was actually getting set up to play our set at the time, and I just remember hearing this song, and I'm just like, wait, okay, so this is Deftones, awesome. What? He's rapping and he's got flow and like, what the fuck?
Yeah, Deftones on the first 2 albums is Limp Bizkit if they ever succeeded and were good. Like,
exactly. Dude, and like the other crazy thing about that record is I never like figured that they could be that level of insane and still be still clearly show true talent in their writing. Because of course, I'm just Mr. Angry. I just want, because I was like, what, 16, 17 at the time. So of course I'm just Mr. Angry. I just want, people say fuck you. Yeah, sorry, Slipknot, kind of calling you out there a little bit.
Sorry, buddies.
But even though your last record was good, I liked it. But you also had just to me it was the perfect version of Keep It Simple, Stupid when it came to their songwriting, and to me it was like the perfect introduction to what I've come to love about Deftones, because Diamond Eyes is still a great record, but it is a little bit more on the experimental side of Deftones.
Oh, it absolutely is.
And I'd say it was a good entry point, but not necessarily the entry point that I needed. Whereas Adrenaline for me was the entry point.
Yeah.
I needed.
And I think Adrenaline, Around the Fur, both of those albums have a lot to bring to people who are and I don't mean this in a negative way, but simple metalheads. They're the ones who just want some classic shreds, some nice heavy beats, but it is very much they sound of their time. While still being Deftones and still being somewhat timeless. I kind of I don't know, maybe that's the fanboy speaking where I'm letting them have a paradox.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
Because they still sound very much like Deftones in this, but this is 90s metal. Like that's 90s metal through and through. Like if I threw it on there into a mix of any of the 90s metal, and it would bleed right in perfectly. But because Deftones always stands out above and beyond in any other ways, especially in their screams, especially in their cleans, especially in their shreds, all of that stuff. Adrenaline is. I am not opposed to that pick at all. Engine Number 9 and Root are literally on my workout playlist as we speak, or it should be. Looking at the album list on there, I'm going to add that on there here shortly.
I've got Engine Number 9 and 7 Words on my workout playlist.
Yeah, that's fuck everybody.
Yeah. I very vividly remember that. The best show that I ever saw in my entire life was, speaking of Slipknot, Knotfest 2012, where it was them, Deftones, Lamb of God, and this was right after Randy got out of prison, so I was really happy to be at that show. And of course Deftones closed out the set with 7 Words, and the place fucking erupted.
Ooh,
and it was amazing. Now, granted, not as amazing as Lamb of God's Wall of Death in the middle of a literal thunderstorm, but close second moment of the night.
Yeah, but if you take something, like if you took a picture of that, literally just that sounds like a beautiful painting waiting to happen. Like,
honestly, if I had the painter's touch, I would have done that years ago and made like millions of it.
That would have been album art somewhere for one of the bands, and then the hardcore scene would have got a hold of it and put like a scary monster on it and ruined it. That's a nice 10-year-old joke for everybody who was a hardcore fan in circa 2010. You know who you are. That's me. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have like 15 of those shirts too. It's okay. But it was the same artist doing all those shirts. That guy was getting bank for like 3 to 4 years. But we're not here to talk about all the hardcore bands. We're here to talk about the prestigious of all Deftones. Yes. I always have to transition into my number 2 and say this is usually pretty controversial because most people would say it deserves to be number 1. But we're going right back to what I started on this, and that's White Pony, baby.
And that is my number 2 as well.
Woo! All right, so let's talk why it's number 2 and not... Well, we'll talk about what we love about White Pony first, then we'll talk about why it's not our number 1s, because that's usually an important question you ask Deftone fans. They're White Pony's number 1, or there's a damn good reason it's not. But yeah, Changing the House of Flies is my favorite song, hands down, out of all of the Deftones categories. So that being on there automatically makes it number 2 regardless. Like, it's hard for me to knock down number 1, but I have a good argument that I'll get into that later. White Pony, despite having my favorite song on them, it wasn't an album I didn't pick up until just after I'd gotten self-titled. I've been listening to self-titled for a long time, and then because the CD shop I went to, I think it was like Record Tower or Tower Records. Now you really know I'm old, guys, because these are all I was a West Coast kid at the time too, so I had all of that good stuff waiting for me. But I went to Tower Records. They didn't have White Pony, but they did have self-titled. I got that one because I knew I needed Deftones right away. And then after that, like, it's been like a year or two later, I think I'd just been listening to it through YouTube or something at some point or another. I found a way to listen to White Pony. And it is one of those ones that doesn't have that walk-on feel for my early formative years, but definitely in my high school years onward. I think I got it for like freshman year in high school for like a Christmas gift or something like that. And I was stoked to listen to it all day Christmas. It does have that same way that Deftones self-titled has that connection and feeling on how I felt as like an angsty, pissed off 13-year-old, like 14, 15-year-old Dylan. Felt a little bit more mature, not too much more, but just enough where I felt like taking that step back into their albums with White Pony, it just kind of made more sense. And I think I was struggling a lot more with just like the teenage depression feeling, being like freshman, sophomore, dealing with all that shit. Something about having a literal song that says back to school, mini maggot, having just that tone be perfect for how I felt. That's the thing. Like Deftones, at any one of their albums I can look past from like 2000 onwards. And I could say, oh yeah, this album landed for me right at this point in my life. And it's usually right around the time it came out. But yeah, I mean, all the tracks on it are defining. Like, Deftones really made their trademark sound from White Pony onwards. It has to be in a top 3 because of this. Like, that, I will make the argument it should always be in a top 3 because this is when they went from just being a 90s nu metal band to being Deftones. Like, White Pony defined that sound moving forward.
Exactly. And for... where do I even begin with this record? Like, literally, out of the Deftones catalog, 4 of my top 10 of their favorite songs of theirs are from this record. You know, you've got Changing the House of Flies, you've got Street Carp, you've got Elite, and while and then Pink Maggot is also in that list because as it's the perfect closer. It's the perfect closer. And while I get why everyone has issues with, you know, Back to School, Mini Maggot, I don't hate it. In fact, I even dare say, it's going back to what you said about Deftones being a good version of Limp Bizkit. This was the song that codified them as, you know, as a new metal band, and like, but not in the derogatory sense of the word, because...
No, yeah, because new metal's usually used as a pretty negative, like, slang against a lot of people, but this is just Deftones defined right. I think that new metal always ties Deftones, but Deftones is not always tied to new metal in that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and even then you have classic tracks like, you know, Knife Party, shit.
Passenger. Oh,
dude.
Yeah.
Literally, we were talking off camera about Tool for a moment before we started the show, and yeah, I just need to freak out about that song for just 2 seconds because holy shit. Chino and Maynard are the perfect pair on that song. Mm-hmm. There's not a dull moment in that track for me. Like, just even, and it's the perfect. It was, you know, yeah, guys. Sorry, I am a smoker, and for me, I've not found a better song to drive down the highway late at night and smoke a cigarette to than Passenger. It's the perfect driving song.
I'll give you that.
You know. But yeah, kids, don't smoke.
Definitely don't smoke. Don't smoke while drive. Vape like all you old kids are already doing now. We already know. Speaking on Passenger, did you ever hear there was a festival version where they had Haley Williams from Paramore come on and do guest vocals for his part?
I caught that video, and you know what? She brought it.
She did, man. People, you know, they can say what they want about Paramore, and part of it is probably fairly owned, but she brought so much fire to that track. Like, it really was its own new song with Haley Williams in addition to it, and she crushes it.
I was just saying, that's one of the beautiful things about a song like Passenger is you can remove one of the elements and put something new in its place, and it doesn't make the song worse, it just makes the song different. It puts it in a different context, in a different perspective, but it's still the same great tune.
Right.
And, you know, shit. Okay, where was this that I saw? I think it was like at like a. It was like a European live video I watched, and they did they did like I think it was either Change or Back to School, and they brought on another guest. I think it was Jonathan Davis or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure. That's like,
And again, or no, sorry, it was Engine Number 9 they did with Jonathan Davis. And
Ooh.
because he's done, covers of that song several times. And yeah, you want to talk about an awesome cover or awesome live version? Find that if you can.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you're talking about, and Jonathan Davis fucking brings it too. Quick, just extra plug for Deftones in a whole. I love that they are just this band who is still, after like literally, I don't know,
25 years roughly.
Yeah, 25 years onwards, still criminally underrated. Like, and this is a band that if like you ask any probably major music industry, especially in rock, metal, like central specific bands, like they'll either say that they pulled influence from them directly, or that like they are a superior band or like the greatest band. Like in the music scene, I think that they get the respect they deserve. But like by like public mainstream fan standards, I still think it's just like, oh, who's Deftones? And I'm like, they're a lot of the reasons we've seen good involvement from like this genre of field for a very long time.
Yeah, like they're the kind of band that if they came out with a new record and it would surpass Taylor Swift as the number one on Billboard 200, then would be the perfect time to be like, okay, motherfuckers, stop whining about your girls' crappy pop tunes and listen to this shit, because this is some of the best music you'll ever hear.
This is Taylor Swift mouthwash at its finest right here, guys. And I know there's a couple of my podcast members who are big Taylor Swift fans, and I'm unapologetically shaming her on the show. That's fine. I'm sure she's actually, like, okay, I've heard terrible things about her in person. But she sponsored Kesha for a little bit there, and I love Kesha. So that's the 50-50 I'm put into at this time. But we're talking neither Taylor Swift or Kesha any further for right now. That's a different episode.
Oh, yes.
Oh, boy. Can we bring Ariana Grande for the holy triangle of, like, artists that I love, hate? Actually, I don't really like Taylor Swift, but I do love Kesha and Ariana Grande.
Well, and actually, okay, so then I guess I'll flip you on that for that triangle real fast. To quick go on this tangent for a second yet, because Kesha, I hate loved her at first. Now I actually really do respect her now that she got out of the bullshit with Dr. Luke, and like good on her for getting out of that mess. And Ariana Grande,
she gets to show her talent now. Now she gets to flex. Like,
exactly. You know, and Ariana Grande, same thing. Like at first didn't really care, but now she's really been killing it lately, and I'm really digging it. And Taylor, kind of the opposite. I actually kind of liked some of her early stuff, and now she's just abysmal.
Yeah,
I'll stand by that.
it's the beehive of Taylor Swifties. I don't know. I've heard a friend of mine deep.
Don't get me started on Beyonce.
It's just the ones where they will no matter what will go and just fight for it, even if the songs aren't good. And even by pop culture standards, I don't think Taylor's stuff is like good, but whatever. Again, I'm a Deftones fan. What the hell do I know, right, guys? So
right, exactly. But now, here's the real scary question: Do we have the same number one?
Ooh, it's possible. Want me to lead?
Lead it.
Okay, my number one Deftones album of all time. I don't even need words for. So for the video people on the show, you get a special treat. For the audio ones, sorry, you're out of luck on this one. I only take my shirt off normally for the Call to Action podcast, as you can catch here, because that's where you get all the good views at. But my chest piece says that it's Diamond Eyes, baby.
Okay.
100%, right across the board.
Unfortunately, it's not mine, but I respect the hell out of that.
Hell yeah. Deftones fan, live, bleed, and that thing was a phoenix when I first got that thing tattooed. That was bloody and red and angry. If you caught it for a split second, feel free to screenshot that, post it on the Call to Action podcast page. They'll love that I went topless, not on our show. They won't love that. They'll be furious. That's views that we're just bleeding out to this D2A show. But so anyway, Diamond Eyes. This is actually a pretty controversial pick because people, I think, loved Diamond Eyes when it came out, but after time, it seemed that it wasn't everybody's favorite or even in their top 2, 3, or 4s. But here's my argument for Diamond Eyes as a whole.
Please.
So after White Pony, we had Self-Titled, which again, very much its own album, very much a Deftones album, but Deftones has done this thing since White Pony, where I feel like they hit a staple album and they experiment. And then they show like all the things they've been like redefining and practicing in the previous 2 albums and then drop it good. So from White Pony onwards, we had Self-Titled and Saturday Night Wrist. I'm not counting B-sides and rarities, whatever. It's a lot of remixes and stuff like that. Good, but it's not officially its own title album, I don't think. So Saturday Night Wrist, which another super experimental one. where they went very trancey rock into it, and that's when they started trying their trance rock sounds. You get Hole in the Earth, you get Rapture, you get a couple of these things that just sound very Macedonian influenced, but it's like if Deftones did it in their own style, which I super dig. But I think that they really maximized all of that sound with Diamond Eyes, where they took it and it was the spiritual sequel to White Pony, in my opinion. It was very much encapsulated all of the sounds of Deftones previously. We have a couple songs on there that sound very much adrenaline, very much around the fur, like they have that heavy beats to it, but are still current, and definitely the audio sounds a lot better because those first 2 albums sounded like they were recorded in a tin can, as much as I love to hate say it. So it has that rawness sound in it. It has the experimental trancey sounds that we get from Saturday Night Wrist, but it seems to take a step up to get to another level. We have, all the flavor and love that I feel like that people fell in love with White Pony, but that was Diamond Eyes. And for me, I think that is just the immaculate defining album for them. And not some people might not agree with me, but as you go, I challenge them to go listen to it again and tell me that everything pre-Diamond Eyes, you don't hear a little bit of it in it, done really well in that album. Diamond Eyes Royal, you've seen The Butcher, has just that nice deep bass line. So good. Sex Tape is one of those songs you just put on and you just meditate to or something, or if you just want to go get baked a little bit and just drift off into a trance. Oh man, there's a couple great songs on this one for it. If you just want to shred and you just want to scream along, you got songs for it. This album has a little bit of everything done right. It is a beautiful buffet of what I think Deftones is and brings to the table. And sure, we've got a couple more albums since then, and I'm expecting that the next album they drop will be very likely in my top 3 if they do the formula again, where they do the Diamond Eyes Part 2, the spiritual sequel, because it's next 2 albums, like I said, tend to be more experimental. We look at Gore, which was very experimental in its trancey sounding way, but a lot of people didn't like Gore. I love Gore.
I love Gore.
I love Gore.
That is a great workout album.
Yeah, Prayers Triangle's intro, just literally that first little guitar strumming thing, oh, so good. Koi no Yokon, it was one of those ones that I loved, but I have to remind myself, I have to go listen and remind myself again. It was one of those ones that I feel like goes under the radar, forgettable, despite the fact that a lot, at least based on the Deftones subreddit, people really love Koi no Yokon, but didn't like Gore. I don't know. I like Koi no Yokon, but it was an experiment in its own way as well. It was fully trancey in that, without any of the heavy. And I think this next album that we're going to get from him later this year or early next year is going to be hopefully that culmination album again, where it's just here's all the stuff we've been practicing with. We took our times, we fleshed it out. It's been about 4 years. Here's our sweet new album. But until then, Diamond Eyes just does it for me. It's the perfect thing of all the reasons I love Deftones in one album. And as an album, it plays start to finish good. Some albums they just have 12 songs and you just call it an album. This one feels cohesive. It's the same thing with White Pony that I would say as well, is that start to finish, this is an album with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that's mine.
It's funny that you bring that up because, that's actually kind of my feelings on Koi no Yokon. I adore this record. And while it's not necessarily as conceptual as something like White Pony or Diamond Eyes, what I think I appreciate the most about it is I feel like the songwriting could not be any tighter on a Deftones record. And I think the production, again, is at its all-time best. Because I do love Gore, but I think the production took a little bit of a step back in favor of more experimenting. Which, granted, that's great. And I also think it's, Chino's, that last gasp of truly angry Chino. Mm-hmm. Especially with a lot of his screams and stuff like Tempest or, hell, and while it's not even the heaviest freaking song in the world, Swerve City, I couldn't ask for a better opener. Just straightforward, fast, fun, and one of the many things that I just love about that record. And what I also really appreciate it's as I mentioned in the very first episode of this show when Ryan and I talked about Meteora by Linkin Park, what I also love about Koi no Yokon is it's probably the album with the most smooth transitions from song to song to song. And because Diamond Eyes does a great job of doing that, but sometimes it will change a little more quickly than maybe I'm personally, look for in a record. But Koi no Yokan, again, at least for me, nails that perfectly. And as you've also, and as you've already said, like, I also expect that this record we're going to get either at the end of this year or beginning of next year. I just wanted to do two things. I want to continue that, as you mentioned, that sort of spiritual successor to, what we've gotten before, and also bring back the experimenting, but show us where this band could still go for the next 10 years, because Deftones ain't slowing down. They ain't slowing down for shit.
Not even a little. They haven't slowed down in 25 years. Do you think they're going to slow down now? They're going to play my funeral songs. Like, that album is going to be awesome. God bless. I love them. They have something for everything for me. Every little bit of my life. Even that mature. So, Koi no Yokan, as we're kind of talking on that, is probably an album I want to go back and listen to again. I remembered one thing. So, as you were talking and mentioning that the transitions were very smooth, I would agree, but I think that's one of my cons against it, strangely enough, is that each song very much has their own flavor, but for that album specifically, I have a hard time figuring out which songs are which whenever I'm like, I just pulled up the track list right now, and I'm like, there's a couple of distinct ones, like Entombed, Swerve Sweaty Leathers. The first chunk of the album I remember very well, but then we get in anything past Tempest, Gaze, Rosemary, Goon Squad. All of those are very smooth transitions, but it's almost too smooth where I couldn't tell you, like, if you played any of these songs and said, tell me which Deftones song this is, and even gave me multiple choice, straight Smowdown style, and said, I'd be like, oof, it could be any one of those four. And that's not a fault. Again, if I play all those songs, I probably really enjoy all those songs. But it's nothing that stabs me in the same way. The beginning of the album, I think, is the staple pieces there, which is a pretty typical, like, way to build a format for an album anyway. You want to put it in and listen the first couple things, you're locked in. But I think that transition part actually made it one of the things where I had the hardest time remembering, like, what the second half of the album sounds like. Here's the thing, I don't dislike any Deftones albums at all. Like, literally, you put any one of them on, I'm fine. Like, sweet. All right, I'm having a good time. I'm going to find at least no less than 5 or 6 tracks that I know every sound, beat, and word to. But yeah, Koi no Yokan hits this weird moment where I think I'm just like, I don't know, the second half just doesn't grab me the same way.
And I've actually heard that from a couple of friends of mine, because this came out right when I was starting college, and I had several friends in my dorm who were also big Deftones fans. We kind of had a couple different listening parties, and we would talk about it, and they brought that up as well. And that's when I started to realize that, like, as I've gotten older, I don't really just listen to any one particular song on an album. I just go through it in one go. It's why I will still say The Wall is one of the greatest records of all time, because, my God, you want a perfect transition between songs on a record, listen to Pink Floyd's The Wall. Or if you want to hear it done as sloppily as possible, listen to any Nickelback record. Because they're just trying to write hits. But whereas for something like, Koi no Yokan, Meteora, or even, hell, another one of my favorite records, Fun's Aim and Ignite. You want a record that will just transition as smoothly as it possibly can. And when a record can do that, especially for a guy like me who likes just sort of listening to an entire record in one go, I appreciate that. But it can get confusing sometimes. To listen to most Between the Buried and Me records. And I love BT Bam. I do. But dear God, I can never tell you when the song Telos ends and when the song Bloom begins on Parallax 2. I can never do that.
I feel that way, especially, I know one album that's Criminally Victim, that's very just outside of the scene right now. Panic at the Disco's first album, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, which is
by far their best album. Fight me in the comments.
Oh, that's not even a question.
If you're older, that's your favorite album. If you're younger, then I can get where, like, Death of a Gentleman or whatever is like your new shit. No, that Fever You Can't Sweat Out is super good. But the problem with that album is that it is exactly what you just mentioned, is that I couldn't tell you, other than
I Write Sins Not Tragedies just because that was their mainline track. Like, I couldn't tell you when one song starts and another one ends, and it's like beautiful. Like, it works out in that way. Like, it's all an upbeat thing where it all sounds very cohesive, but there's almost a problem with being too cohesive, with just it blending all together. I'm like, I love this album. It is a great start to finish album, but if you asked me the tracks and said, hey, which track do you like the most? I'm like, shit, man, I don't know. Like, that's one single, that is a 45-minute track to me. Like, and I prefer it that way, honestly.
Now, Koi no Yokon, it doesn't do that exact feeling for me, but there's a very thin line between being too cohesive and being perfectly cohesive.
Which that's more of the Diamond Eyes and White Pony crowd.
Oh yeah, like that. Yeah, I'm right in that camp, and no surprise at all. I'm a Loud and Proud both of those albums, and they are very start to finish. Like they are. It is a collection of like their greatest hits. Like it's a greatest hits album without being a greatest hits album. Yeah. Every one of those songs on there are very distinct and unique in their own way, and I could tell you distinctly what Teenager sounds like versus Knife Party, or versus Korea, versus RX Queen, versus any of those on White Pony. Same thing with Diamond Eyes. They are all very deliciously distinct titles. And not all of their albums do that very well. I think Saturday Night Wrist, which I love, is one of those albums that tends to kind of be very broad strokes, a little bit maybe too cohesive, but it works in its favor for that way. But that's Deftones, man. You know, here's the thing. I'm never going to question Deftones' too cohesiveness because I think part of it is intention as well. And I don't know for sure that that's not what they wanted to do with it. When they dropped Koi no Yokon, Saturday Night Wrist, a couple of these other ones that are maybe too cohesive by my standards, maybe they wanted it to make just be one coherent sound that they were like, this is what they were experimenting with. I know behind the scenes that they had mentioned in a couple of these earlier albums why we tend to hear more distinct sound, and maybe Koi no Yokon versus Gore, I think, is a fair argument, where Gore kind of has the same... I always come back to describing it as like trans metal sound, like it's both like trans melodic, but also it's metal. I remember that there were a lot of drama coming out saying that like at the time with Gore, people were just like, yeah, production sucked, and the band was like recording it at two separate times, and Chino admitted later that he was like, he did his parts and Steph did his parts, and there wasn't a lot of collaboration behind it. And I can kind of see where that comes from at points. I mean, I still love that album regardless, but they've said one of the things that they're really pushed on for this whole next album coming up is making sure that it's cohesive beat, that they're writing together, that there's a balance. Because where Chino does no wrong in my eyes, there is also a part where I'm like, Steph Carpenter doesn't do any wrong in my eyes either, though I'd love to have his opinion and have him have more, sway on the album. If we want to go a little bit more heavy and drop a little bit more chords and do a lot more like deep stuff and maybe push Chino to do some deep guttural screams again. Like, oh gosh, as much as I love just hearing the smooth vocals of Chino, whenever he does a scream, like, when you listen to enough metal, a lot of screams do just kind of sound to blur together, and very few ever hit above the waves of like knowing the difference on it. And Chino has been for 25 years uniquely specific in his like high-pitched guttural scream that just sounds like it's like stabbing you beautifully. Like you're just like, I deserve this. This is fine. What was one way? I remember a friend of mine once said that they were like, if they were comparing it to Amir was the example, which I don't know, just pick any hardcore band for relevancy for right now, guys. So it's the difference between a music that you listen to and they're vocally fucking you versus like Chino vocally making love to you. Like that is the biggest like comparison between the two. But when Chino hits those notes, man, what was the song recently? Hold on, let me look this up. It was on a DC movie. I think it was on the Ninja Batman movie, where he did guest vocals on a song, and he goes old school Chino in it. Oh, let me find that in my playlist really quick. Just 1 second. I'm gonna risk Chris on this one, see if he can't find it before me. It was in a recent playlist. Which one were you guys? No more remember. Yeah. Brief Exchange. It is just Chino on his Spotify. He does a one album song. It's listed just as Chino, but I think I forget the band that was playing with him. But it is from DC's Dark Knight's metal soundtrack. Check that song out, because I will tell you, it sounds like it is Around the Fur 2.0 coming in the best way possible. I was so giddy when I found that song.
Nice.
Highly recommend. Go give that a listen there, folks. Chris, if you haven't listened to it, give it a listen.
I actually haven't given that a listen, so I have something I will look up. And it's funny that you mention him having that effect. Like, I remember around the time I was getting into Deftones, I was also starting to get into Seven Dust. And I very vividly remember that on their 1999 record, they actually had Chino on for a song called Bender. And good God, the shrieks were perfect in that track. And, of course, he also brought his beautiful, angelic, clean tone that, we fucking adore him for, because I swear to God, seriously, that man's clean voice. But he also
not Samuel Jackson, Morgan Freeman. There we go.
Yeah, he's the Morgan Freeman of metal vocalists.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would use right there.
Yeah, and he is in his own sort of caliber of like people who know how to stand out in the world of metal vocalists, and it's like I feel like it's him, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, Chad Gray pre Hell Yeah, back when he was just doing Mudvayne, like. He wasn't the greatest vocalist of all time, but when he screamed, oh motherfucker, you knew instantly who was singing at you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and here's the thing: you and I are both leaving out who might be arguably the best member of the entire band, because as much love as we've given to Steph and Chino so far, I would like to make a very controversial statement here.
Okay. Hot take.
Most underrated drummer in rock and the best drummer of the entire nu metal scene is Abe Cunningham.
I won't fight it. Whatever. I'm that diehard of a Deftones fan. I won't fight it. This is a very biased show. I'm holding no restraints against that at all. I'm trying to think of how perfectly, like a couple songs that the drum excels in. It's hard because when you have two major stars, it's like having two Tom Bradys on an album. But really, the whole band is just nothing but Tom Brady's in their own regards on any instrument they play. Even the bass drops is just as well with that. I mean, all of that is good stuff. So
both Chi and Sergio, Chi, rest in peace, brother.
Rip Bud.
But shit. Well, let's just go back to that for just 2 seconds. Like, and here, and I actually have a great example of Abe's insane drumming. So let's go back to Gore for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, the very opening of Prayers and Triangles, it's just this very simple drum beat that starts off nice and easy. But if you notice just how he is in complete control of everybody's dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not Steph who's taking the charge on that. It's not Sergio who's taking the charge. It's not Frank. As great as he is, he's not taking the charge on that. It's Abe. He sets the foundation. And then everyone joins in with him. And then when he goes crazy, everyone gets to go crazy.
Oh yeah.
And that's what a great drummer can do for any band.
I would agree. I think that if you're looking for what a drummer does in a band, and especially like what's the role, because I think they've said that it often goes back and forth between like drummers and bassists, that they're like, these are the ones that need to be keeping the tempo. They kind of just keep everybody else in line. The guitarist, make sure he knows where he's at in the song. Singers kind of all in time with that, and it kind of goes back and forth between the two. I would say that Abe definitely sticks out more in the Deftones roster for making sure that everybody's on the tap they need to be at. If you're listening, I'm trying to think of what is the one that intros very well. I'm thinking of an old album, and it's all going to bleed in. I won't think of the exact song I'm thinking of right now, but yeah, there are just some times when he wants to be heard and wants to take the spotlight, he takes it. Like, it is not even a question of it. When Abe Cunningham goes hard on the drums, like the song I'm thinking about, just and then it kind of all leads into it. It's gonna kill me. I'll listen to it later. I'm not gonna listen to all these songs on stream right now. But yeah, man, every one of those guys is so perfectly well balanced, and obviously, like, Chino is the face behind the band, no doubt. But like, every one of the members on that band brings something to the table, and that is something that's so very clear in the albums. And I can see, if you're a Deftones fan, you already know this. I'm preaching to the choir on this one, but I think that's why so much drama happened around Gore when they were hearing that, they were recording separately and it wasn't like as cohesive in the recording process, not necessarily in how the album sounds. But God, you know what? The more I'm thinking about it, the more I think you're right. I don't think another drummer sticks out as well as Abe in the scene. Like, I don't really. Korn's drummer's really good. The name I'm blanking on right now.
And Ray Luzier is very good, but he's also I feel like he stays in his lane a little too much to
Right.
be viewed as a risk. Abe, throughout their entire run, he's been kind of a risk, but kind of like Trey Cool before him. Well, actually, around the same time as him. Now that I really start to think about it, because both never mind. Both those albums were '94. But without them kind of pulling everybody back and keeping everybody in control, both Green Day and Deftones would be totally lost.
I think they would have devastated themselves right after White Pony if they didn't have some foundation in that band to kind of keep it all together. Because it's so easy, and this is something they've spoken about in interviews before, where like right around the time of success of White Pony, obviously it was coming off of Adrenaline. They were doing Ozfest and stuff like that. Oof, my age is showing again. Remember when Ozfest was still Ozfest? But they were talking at the time how the success was just kind of getting so far ahead of themselves, and they were hitting that drug rock and roll vibe in the band, and they were just like, yeah, we had to clean up and get used to it. That's another thing that's always translated well with Deftones, is that they've shown their maturity in their later albums, and that's not necessarily the sound to say that they've toned it down or gotten boring. I think if you're strictly a metalhead and you don't really like the experimental side of Deftones, you could probably make that argument. If you went in listening for the first couple albums and you wanted Adrenaline Part 3, if you wanted it around the first sounding stuff, and you strictly wanted the raw guitar sounds and stuff you can get from any other band, you're probably disappointed with the next couple album releases from Deftones because they are so experimentally on the other side.
Yeah.
But if you suck through it and listened and you mature with it like a nice fine wine, Deftones only gets better. And even if their later albums aren't my favorite albums, they've never been a bad album, and they've matured in a way that Gore is the epitome of mature album.
Yes.
Looking at the sounds of it across the board, even if it's not, they didn't record all at the same time, that just sounds like an album or a band that has been doing their shit for a long time, knows their sound, and knows how to still innovate with their sound. That's the biggest thing, because a lot of bands get stuck in their sound and they get stale, or they just mainstream themselves out. I'm looking at you, 3 Days Grace. So I'm looking at you, Word Alive. I'm looking at you, Of Mice and Men. All the hardcore scene is on blast right now. You guys are all so good. I will do a whole episode separately of just hardcore bands anywhere from circa 2009 to 2012.
Yeah, I'll certainly have you back on the show to dive into that.
Oof. Yeah, we'll do movie or music.
Nosh Schmodown episode discussions all day with that. Yeah, I can talk that. I can talk how much I love Ariana Grande on the most recent podcast stuff. I don't know why I love it as much as I do. I think the big thing, I'm going to go off track for a second.
It's fine.
I think the thing that I've realized with Ariana Grande and why I've just painfully like her now is that I fought it for so long. So it was one of those things where it's that pop star hate, where if you know who we are, guys, if you've been a metalhead or a hardcore head or something like that, you hear anything pop related, and our first instinct is to hate it. Yeah. And I realize I'm older now, I'm a little bit more mature. I don't sit there and just crucify anything that doesn't have a breakdown or screaming or anything in it. I'm a little bit more accepting of my old age. But it is one of those things where I'm also accepting that I'm all right, so is this song catchy? Here's the biggest argument. Is the song catchy, or is it actually good? And that's the one where I'm just sitting there, and it was Thank You Next came out, and that song would not get out of my head, and I just put it in the background. I won't lie, I found one of those 5-hour insane versions on YouTube. I just left it, and I would do stuff to it. Not sexually or anything. I could realize the weird connotation with that. I would have it in the background, maybe play games or something like that, is what I mean. And then after a while, it's just well, let me just put on the Ariana Grande page on Spotify. Let me just go through. And I'm listening to her older songs like God is a Woman and a couple of these other NTU tracks that come up. I'm damn, these are all actually really good. God is a Woman slaps. I'm do I just like Ariana Grande? And I've just admitted it now, guys.
Saying, at that point, you gotta just fight it.
I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, that's the pop. That's your pop artist transition for being a metalhead into liking Ariana Grande. That's just, at some point you just drink the Kool-Aid and you're just I feel bad about it, and now it's just shameless. I'm just fuck it. I'm borderline 30 here soon. I'm showing my age a little bit again on that. I just had a 29th birthday not too long ago, which makes me much older than James on the show. James is a child, and I will disregard him at any episode I get, even if it's not on our show. If you don't know who James is, feel free to watch the Call to Action podcast with any episode with me and the young man on it. You'll know who we're talking about. He's our favorite guy to love hate.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know why I train with him for trivia as much as I do, but I guess I need someone to make him feel stupid about himself for not knowing as much as me. But
Here's the
Yeah.
thing.
James has that young man time. He's not. So I'll spoil his age for everybody. He's not 21 yet, and this is a funny topic for us as often as it comes up. Because being almost 10 years older, it is just a funny thing where like we will fight and talk just as Schmodown fans will. Like
No age is needed for that.
Yeah.
But then there are times when like real life stuff comes up, and he'll just be like, "For a long time, I thought you were the same age as me," and I'm like, "Bro, I'm like a decade older than you. I'm married with a house. Like, you can't hit me with that stuff. I haven't been in college for 5 years. That's how old I am at this point. Good lord." So anyway, enough talking about James. He gets enough airtime sneaking onto all the segments on our show. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
If we lose, the hotly debated thing amongst all of our fans at Call to Action is that if we lose
The Schmodown Awards. Sorry, Doman. I'm going to plug our show on your show, as I should. As the #1 Schmodown channel reactor, besides obviously like the rundown and all that stuff, they had to take themselves out, which I respect. The only reason we will lose is because of James. And the only reason we will possibly also win is, strangely, because of James, too. Behind the scenes, he does a lot of work on just staying active because he has the time to do so. So James is the biggest we're going to lose or we're going to win because of him. But all of our fans agree, if we don't win, it's because of James. And this is the guy who made a Call to Asian podcast episode, guys. Make no mistake. I know controversial moves when I know them. But
Yeah, but you know what? You were onto something when you put that together because, is there anything like that in our space?
literally there's not. And I will
Exactly.
I'll humble brag on my podcast as a whole because I can't take all the credit in the world.
I'm definitely I'll be an ego for right now and say I'm one of the big personalities on there. I keep that show afloat. I do whole collision reactions straight for that. Holy hell, that was exhausting.
Oh my god, I drank the entire time. But so I'm great. Like I know I'm great, and that's awesome. The Call to Asian episode is great, and we will have many more in the future. But I think that the one thing that our ensemble does, because we are a 10, maybe even 11 person crew, I lose track of how many people are in there. We have a small football team worth of podcasters ready at any given point. We do diversity so damn well on that show. Where, sure, I think Take 3 has like Kristen, right? I don't know. I kind of keep up with everybody else. I make the jokes on our show, but in all honesty, I kind of keep up with some of the other shows just from time to time. And I know we got like some female diversity here, but there's not really a lot of diversity pieces. We had a ladies' night episode not too long ago that went amazing. We can't wait to plug that again coming soon. But having a full part Asian, all Asian episode where with Asian representation, it's the Crazy Rich Asians of Schmodown reactor episodes. It's just being able to put out that kind of diversity means so much, especially in our field, because after a while we're all big personalities. But knowing full well that, there are times where Jay Washington will be on his high horse saying that, I'm not getting voted as manager of the year because diversity's sake and stuff like that. And there probably are people who are terrible who aren't voting because he is a black man. Equally so, people aren't voting for Roxy because she's a female. There are these people, and that's the truth of it. But it's not all of us. So the fact that we get to contribute to any of that diversity's sake, being able to bring something new and experimental and just wacky, even if it's partly an inside joke, partly just because I thought that'd be a really cool idea to do, that's great. I love that we're able to do that with all 15 of our podcast members. We are like rabbits. We have 4 more every time I add on.
Anyway, that's about to say, and I've heard wild rumors that I'm apparently trying to be stolen from D2A to come over there. It's like, do you need another white guy? You really don't.
We don't need another white guy, that's for sure. We need a black, female, trans. I don't know. We need somebody to hit all those boxes, but definitely doesn't.
That's me not being too PC. That's fine. We have the most diverse cast on the crew. I'm allowed to say that if I want to. Jay Washington's going to be in the comments.
Which actually, then, to tie this back to Deftones.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We've gone way off track right now.
No, actually, again, to go off of your diversity point, I think that's one of the low-key secrets of why they're so fucking great.
Oh, they got that spicy Latino side to them, buddy.
They got the spicy Latino side. They, again, with both Sergio and She, they had either, really interesting Asian-inspired licks, or they also had very funky African-American-inspired licks, and the thing with Abe, yeah, sure, he's the white guy, but he's also probably the more, but he's the most consistent.
He's consistently white and consistently drumming as a white person.
Yeah.
Not as a bad way, but yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. They all have that little flavor that they bring into it. I think that adds into the fiesta that is Deftones in that way, that they all have a little bit of that cultural flavor that does bleed through in their music from time to time. And you can even tell whenever it's Chino in the early albums doing rapping and stuff like that, which I still think is stellar. Like, even more so in that. He was a feature on, Mike Shinoda, there we go.
Oh.
Mike Shinoda, him and Machine Gun Kelly and Chino did Liftoff. That's the title of the song. And it's not Chino doing hip hop or anything like that. The song is very hip hop in nature. It's very much Mike Shinoda's gig. Chino's doing Chino stuff, but the fact that he's just you can put him into any genre for that sound and he improves it, says a lot about his talent. And I think everybody knows that at this level.
Pretty much. I mean, and that's ultimately why Deftones will have to go down in history as just one of the great bands. Mm-hmm. It's why they'll go down, and the fact that they don't have, the same recognition as, a Nickelback or a 3 Days Grace or a Leonard Skinner, just, one of those bands that just gets a stupid amount of love for mediocre talent at best. Sorry, Skinner fans, but I'm not sorry. Fuck Freebird. But I'm just so glad that they exist. They're one of the bands that I'm genuinely happy, and I feel like I'm a better musician because they exist. Mm-hmm. Just like Linkin Park and Lamb of God and Slipknot before them. Again, in terms of when I discovered them,
not necessarily as of release.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a better musician and a better songwriter because Deftones has always been there for me. And who knows, and I know for a fact I'm not the only person who says that, because as you and I have said a couple times by now, everybody and their mother has taken influence from the Deftones.
Oh, yeah. Absurd amount. In one capacity or the other, in one little honorary mention, almost, so to speak. Under Oath has a whole album for it. I don't remember if I said that at the beginning of the stream or if it was off stream or not, but, which album is that? I'm going to call you out for it, Under Oath.
Erase Me.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that whole album is so Deftones inspired on the nose. It feels like they're almost covering them.
Just about, or shit, when fucking Suicide Silence, of all bands, decides to cover Engine Number 9, and unlike Korn, who did a good job with it, they completely botched it. Just like when they covered, I'm thinking of Bring Me the Horizon covering Eyeless, never mind. But yeah, fuck Bring Me the Horizon.
Yeah, Bring Me the... I will say this about Bring Me the Horizon, though. Those... Mitch and that whole crew knows how to market to mainstream. Say what you will, he came in, so hear me out.
Again, I'm remembering everybody who's tuning in at home that I am very much a hardcore kid from the 2009 scene. Whenever hardcore picked up, whenever not Deftones, sorry. It's just built into me now. Devil Wears Prada dropped with Roots Above Ground, which I still think is the most defining album of that peak, besides maybe Deceiver from Word Alive or something like that. We start getting in a couple of these ones. These are huge staple ones that really set the tone for it. We Came as Romans came on. All of that stuff aside. Bring Me the Horizon was in there, and they were doing partycore, is the best way I can describe it. It's if you had a hardcore, a bunch of your friends who would listen to hardcore music, you could throw Bring Me the Horizon's first album, second album on, and it makes sense in a party context. It's weird, but it was actually super good for its time. But because he's an experienced singer, he blew out his vocals doing that, so now he went very mainstream media, and even now we have Mantra and a couple of these other mainstream. They've stayed relevant, and they've downstepped their hardcore niche scene into just being more mainstream, and they're still in it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to argue with any of the success those guys have, but
I'm not saying it's earned, but it's definitely they're doing something right.
Yeah. They're kind of going the Seether route.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Oof.
What a dark path that's gone.
Oh good God. I'm still mad about Country Song. I'm still mad about that fucking thing.
Oh boy. top 3 sellouts off the top of my head. Well, Nickelback is like the definition of a sellout, but you know what? Fuck them. They're Canadian. I'm sure they're super nice, and honestly, they're still successful in some capacity. So maybe they get the last laugh. I can be spiteful if I want to.
Yeah, I'll join you in that conversation because just them in theory. Yeah. They dropped the fucking of a dead man, and you think I'm supposed to just forgive that? No, that's not how that works. You're still
You don't just get to cut that part of your name off just because you're making somewhat different sounds. Although Of Mice, if just decided to be Of Mice instead of Mice and Men, that would have been nice. After I lost Austin Carlisle, that band just went mainstream rock again. Word alive, mainstream rock again.
God, asking Alexandria.
Mainstream rock again. I love seeing some of these hardcore bands that I saw in their like heyday, and then seeing them paired up in like festivals that are like clearly I'm like, oh, I don't even have to listen to their new stuff to know that they sold out, because they wouldn't be on this roster if that wasn't the case.
Yep.
That's and see, there it is. There's that young man in me, that's music stopped me, that says, "Fuck you for not playing what I liked." Like, and that's the music. That's the beautiful thing about Deftones. Everything they put out, I like regardless. So I can just be a diehard fan and a snob at the same time.
Exactly. And sure, we can nitpick certain songs, but yeah. Still, the overall product is just too fucking good.
Oh yeah, 100% of the songs are definitely not good. Like, there are some songs that I definitely skip through when I'm going through this, but the older albums I feel like are the ones that just haven't aged the best with me. Like, the ones that hit hard for that reason, I have to be in the right like mindset for it. But if you just threw on like Adrenaline, I don't know, a handful of the songs, I'm gonna be like, shit, this song slaps every time. But a couple of the other songs, like handful of the rest of that album, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not in the mood to listen to old rock right now. Poor quality, like recording wise, not necessarily in flavor.
But God bless Deftones. The day that they ever break up, hopefully, I hope I'm just dead before then. I really do. Like,
Same.
I don't want to live to see that.
Or it have be a case of like the band died in like a Leonard Skinner type accident, like
something crazy tragic, and I kind of hate to say that because I'm just like.
But that's the only way. That's the only way we'll accept it.
Yeah, there's no other reason. If they split up and I knew those members all existed and that they could still play music, then it's just I couldn't live knowing that it's just like, but you could be playing music together, making a new album. Why, damn it! Like, yeah, it'd be too much. Somebody has to die again, and like she already died, so we probably don't need to wish that on them. They actually have some pretty bad luck with that. So
unfortunately, they do, but hopefully, hopefully they can just keep doing their thing like they have been, because to start to close this out, I'm just gonna reiterate for like the 10th time. Deftones are one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time.
They are my number 1
of all time. There's not even another band that comes close. Like, there's a top 5, but number 1 is so
far ahead with Deftones. It's absurd.
And I absolutely respect that, because when you have talent in songwriting, in performing, in understanding what makes good music like they do, you can do whatever the fuck you want and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, any other final things you want to throw in there before we close this out?
Let's see. Yeah, I'm sure there's something I want to throw in here real quick. Let me look through their discography one more time to make sure I'm not missing anything.
By all means.
B-Sides and Rarities is overrated. I said it.
You're not wrong.
I love it, but it's covers.
Even though I will say their cover of Simple Man is miles better than Shinedown.
Yeah, Simple Man is like a billion miles away better. Yeah, like I'll give them that. That's definitely a standout album. And then we get acoustic change in the House of Flies, which is amazing. But I don't know. That album's overrated. I just wanted to say that for everybody listening to make sure that I have something controversial to say. I love everything about them, but B-Sides and Rarities. You all suck that dick way too much, guys.
Yeah.
Go listen to Gore again. Give it another chance. Quit being so hateful.
All right. And with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Down Tuned Dissection. I want to thank our good friend Dylan once again for coming on the show to talk about one of the best bands ever. And Dylan, please, even though you plugged yourself a couple times, do it one more time. Plug yourself. Where can the good folks find you and call to action online?
Oh, buddy.
You can catch me at the Call to Action podcast. You can also look for my shirt right now. We have merch out there. Go to TeePublic, look up Schmodown. I think you just our stuff's somewhere in there. I think if we try to look for Call to Action, I was told that it won't pop up immediately. So just look at Schmodown shirts, as you should. Support the show. Yeah, you can also catch me, of course, at the Call to Action podcast. You can catch us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, especially where we're putting all that spicy hot Schmodown content out. We are pretty strictly a Schmodown channel, so if you haven't watched Schmodown, Movie Trivia Schmodown, I'm plugging that. Go watch that. If you tune in here and you're just listening for some sweet, like, oh, I'm a Deftones fan, just happen to be tuning in, Movie Trivia Schmodown, it's like wrestling meets movie trivia. If that just makes you curious enough, go check out an episode. But we do a lot of commentary on that. We do exclusively commentary on that. There's a whole roster of us if you really want to just get in there. That's where you can catch me at. You can catch me personally on Twitter at CAMACH Octopus. Don't try to pronounce that out loud. It's just like, I don't know. I don't even think it's a word whenever it's said aloud. Don't try it. I see you thinking about it. Don't do it. It's like Voldemort. You can't say it aloud. Whoops. Other than that, that's where you can catch me, guys. If you also just happen to play Street Fighter or a couple other fighting games, you can also catch me on online, me beating you down. Final Fantasy trading card game has a trading card game. Let me try that again. I'll be in LA playing for that in a tournament here soon. If you're in the LA area and you're a fan, shout me out. I'm totally free. If I lose early, I'm just going to go be getting drunk at a bar, hoping to maybe try to get into Schmodown matches that afternoon. I'll see what I can do. That's all I got to plug. Oh, plug. One last thing. Plug. Go do some therapy, guys. Mental health awareness is always being a prevalent thing. I'm a therapist by trade, so that's how I pay for all of my luxurious hobbies and stuff. I play cards and I talk about movie trivia. It's not too luxurious. But, yeah, take care of yourselves. Everybody, if you're feeling a little down, feeling a little upset, anybody can improve from therapy. But go check it out. Go check out that mental health, guys. We're trending right now. Let's go. Let's keep that steam up.
Awesome. And, of course, you guys can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Stardust, Letterboxd, and Discord at Skywalker Doman. You guys can follow this for your channel on Twitter and Instagram at D2A Channel. Please like our Facebook page and join our brand new Facebook group. We've got over 80 members in there. And also make sure you guys check out yesterday's episode of the Who Cares Anime podcast, where Nico, Case, and I talked about some of our favorite movies of all time in honor of our 1-year anniversary. Woohoo! Woo! And stay tuned next week for Downtown Dissection, because I'll be hijacking the show one more time to be talking to another mutual friend of Dylan and mine, Abby Friel. Should be a hell.
Love Abby. Abby's delightful.
Should be a hell of a time, and I cannot wait for that episode. But until next time, guys, be safe. Take care of your mental health, please. It's awesome, and we will see you in the pit.
Make sure to vote Call to Action for the Schmodown Awards 2019. Woo!